Every year, my college takes a trip to Sundance, but due to the pandemic, we did not get to go in person this year. But we were able to watch the premieres of multiple films online. This is very exciting because Sundance is the biggest film festival in the United States, and the only other festival I've attended was a small one in my hometown. Due to it being online, I didn't get to see very many films, and we watched all of them in the span of 2 days. So I didn't get to see everything due to fatigue. Here is every Sundance film I saw this year ranked. At number 7 is Marvelous in the Black Hole, directed by Kate Sang. This film is a comedy film that follows a teenage delinquent that befriends a surly magician who helps her navigate her inner demons and dysfunctional family with sleight of hand magic. A coming-of-age comedy that touches on unlikely friendships, grief, and finding hope in the darkest moments. This film felt very inspired by Taika Waititi's style of comedy, fast-paced, and a troubled child main character. I like basically everything about the first act, but as it progresses, it feels a little like every other coming-of-age story there is. In Taika Waititi's films, the dialogue and character interactions feel very unrealistic, but it doesn't matter because the jokes almost always land. But in this film, however, it seems that a large amount of interaction just seem unrealistic, and they're mainly just to progress the story. There are many creative sequences that are visually interesting, but besides those and the humor, I didn't find much else that stood out. There are a few instances where you can tell this is a first feature film for the director, like weird line deliveries and points where there are jump cuts, but these are minor. If the director can hone in her skills, I see a lot of potential for her. It isn't the most original film, but at least it has personality. I give Marvelous in the Black Hole a 6 out of 10. Coming in at number 6, we have In the Same Breath, directed by Nan-Fu Wang. This is a documentary that follows how the Chinese and American governments reacted to the outbreak of the COVID-19 pandemic. This is very much a documentary. It is very informative, and it gives good first-hand accounts of people affected by the pandemic. The main thing that this has going for it is showing just how similarly the United States and China dealt with COVID-19, and highlights the irony that one country claims freedom for all its citizens, but ultimately acted the same way a communist country where the citizens have limited freedom did. The core is good, but the filmmaking was nothing spectacular. It felt like a very long news story, especially since much of it was footage taken by journalists with handheld cameras in hospitals or clips from the news. I wish the pacing was a little bit faster because some points just did not hold my attention. It even shows things that aren't common knowledge for everyone, like the mental health of health workers at the time. Also, they love their drone shots in this. There are a lot of those. But if a long, emotional news story sounds appealing to you, then watch this when you can. I give In the Same Breath a 7 out of 10. Coming in at number 5 is Together Together, directed by Nicole Beckwith. The synopsis for this film is a 40-year-old man hires a young woman to be a surrogate mother for his child, and the relationship challenges their perceptions of love. I was not really looking forward to this one because it looks like a run-of-the-mill rom-com or a Hallmark movie with a bigger budget, but it did not feel that way at all. This film is about lonely people finding their way, and there is no forced romance in it. It is shot like a rom-com, but there are a few exceptions. And I was afraid Ed Helms would just give his Andy Bernard bit like he does in some other films, but he breaks away and really embodies a neurotic soon-to-be father who deeply cares about his child and eventually the woman carrying it. A lot of jokes felt like they would have been hilarious to a middle-aged mom, but a lot really resonated with me. The characters could easily have become caricatures, but they have real emotional depth. It is inspired by Woody Allen films, and there's even a reference to him in there, and I feel if it was shot just a tad better, then it could maybe be a modern-day Woody Allen movie. It was better than I expected. I give Together Together a 7 out of 10. Number 4 is Luzu, directed by Alex Camilleri. Luzu is a Maltese film that is about a man that risks everything to provide for his wife and newborn son by entering Malta's black market fishing industry. Let me start this by saying this film looks amazing. This was the second best looking film I saw at Sundance this year. The color grading is noticeable, but in a good way. This is like a gangster movie, but with fishing, and that's pretty cool. It is pretty simplistic, but I thought there was enough interesting things going on to keep me interested throughout. I also want to say there was probably a lot of effort put into this film because it is hard to record crisp audio on a boat, and also somehow they got the baby in the film to cry and be quiet exactly when it needed to, which is not easy. The main actor was a real fisherman who had never acted before, which is also a big feat because he did pretty great. I appreciate the framing and the orchestral motifs. There could have been higher high points and lower low points, but besides that, it was pretty enjoyable. It's just a nice little film. If you're okay with simplicity, then I recommend this one. I give Luzu a 7 out of 10. Number 3 is Land, directed by Robin Wright. This film is about a local hunter that brings a grieving lawyer back from the brink of death after she retreats to the harsh wilderness of the Rockies. There isn't a whole lot to say about this one, as it is even more simplistic than Luzu. But this is the best looking film I saw. Every shot is either intentional or gorgeous. This reminds me of a bigger budget Kelly Reichardt film since it is slow, methodical, has themes of friendship, and it's very meditative. I found it to be like a spiritual experience of the main character facing her demons as represented by the dangers of nature she faces. The sound design was incredible, as it is also hard to record in the environment they were in. Robin Wright, the director, also stars in the film, and hers was probably my favorite performance of the festival. I enjoyed how there were long sections with no dialogue, and how well the character's psyche was presented. It was very simple but effective. I give Land a 7 out of 10. Number 2, Street Gang, How We Got to Sesame Street, directed by Marilyn Agrello. This is a documentary that takes a look at the history of the long-running children's TV show Sesame Street. You can tell by watching this that this is meant for the adults who grew up watching early Sesame Street. The target audience is not children, as one may think from the subject matter, and I love it for that. There's a childlike wonder mixed with adult humor that comes off very charming. This does everything a documentary should do. It encapsulates an entire generation of television watchers and shows how much fun they had making the show. We have fun just watching the crew have fun making an iconic show. It shows surprising emotional depth in Sesame Street characters as well as the creators. Like the show it's about, it never talks down to the audience and it shows them respect. This is just overall a good time, especially if you grew up with the show. I give Street Gang, How We Got to Sesame Street, an 8 out of 10. And my favorite film from Sundance this year is Mass, directed by Fran Kranz. I had mixed feelings about this one, but I would say the strengths outweigh the weaknesses. So I'll start with what I don't like. I think this film could have been about a half an hour shorter, especially considering the concept, which I won't spoil, but I will say it mostly takes place in one location. Because of this, there isn't much need to watch when you could just listen. It is mostly one conversation, and I feel like if it were shorter and there was more done visually, like and 12 Angry Men, another film set mostly in one location, centering around one conversation, then it would have been a lot stronger. However, before and after this one location, I absolutely loved the framing of people, as it made them seem small, and you could choose what you wanted to look at. Until the reveal of what it's about, this is basically Subtlety the movie, which is great. It's full of small details and hints that don't hold the audience's hand. I was even feeling a large amount of dread, like I was watching a horror movie in the beginning, even though I had no idea what was happening. It was just directed so well. The dialogue was very naturalistic, similar to Noah Baumbach's writing. The conversation is intensely emotional, and it has great actors that killed it in their roles. This film is like a haiku. It's very constrained, but in those constraints, the artist is forced to be creative and make something beautiful. This film was tiresome narratively and emotionally, and I think it had potential to be truly great if it had a little more respect for the viewer's time. Overall, It was the best film I saw this year so far. I give Mass an 8 out of 10. Thank you for watching. I appreciate those that listen to me do what I love, which is talk about movies. Let me know if you will be catching these films when they get released or if you've already seen them. Take it easy.